Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to demystify the absolute most complex object in the known universe. And, it's not out there in deep space. It is literally sitting right inside our skulls. We're tackling the human brain, going on a massive journey from the macro structures, zooming all the way down to the microscopic functions, and finally looking ahead to the absolute frontier of neuroscience.
So let's kick things off with a pretty provocative thought. Are you your brain? Really think about it for a second. Is absolutely everything you think, feel, and experience, your memories, your entire personality, is all of that ultimately just a product of this 3-pound jelly-like organ? It's a massive question, and to even begin answering it, we have to understand how this incredible piece of biological machinery actually works.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're dealing with here, just think about this massive number, 86 billion. Consider that there are close to 86 billion nerve cells, or neurons, firing away inside your head right this very second. And hey, it doesn't stop there. There are an equal number of glial cells that basically act as the brain's support staff and cleanup crew. It's just a staggering, mind-boggling amount of cellular activity happening every single moment, just to keep you functioning, thinking, and breathing.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap. We've broken this down into 5 quick parts. First, meet your command center. Second, the language of neurons. Third, where memories are made. Fourth, hijacking the reward circuit. And finally, mapping the connectome.
Part 1. Meet your command center.
Let's start by establishing exactly how this massive control system is physically organized to run our bodies 24/7. Your nervous system basically has 2 major subdivisions. The central nervous system, or CNS, is made up of your brain and spinal cord. That is your central command. Meanwhile, the peripheral nervous system, or PNS, acts as this vast network of nerve highways connecting that central command to the rest of your body. It sends sensory information up to the brain and carries motor commands right back down.
Now, within that central command, the largest part of your brain is the cerebellum, which is divided into 4 very specialized departments. Up front, you've got the frontal lobe, handling your conscious thinking and voluntary movement. Over in the back, the occipital lobe dictates everything you see. Up top, the parietal lobe interprets the sensory world around you. And on the sides, the temporal lobes manage your memory and language. It's a brilliantly organized division of labor.
You can actually think of the brain's internal architecture in 2 distinct parts. The darker, outer gray matter acts kind of like the actual computer processors. That's where the day-to-day functioning, processing, and interpreting actually happen. Then, the lighter inner white matter acts as the physical cables, these thick nerve fiber bundles sending all those processed signals everywhere they need to go across your central nervous system. Before we zoom in any further, we absolutely have to bust a few common myths. First off, those wrinkles on the brain? No, they don't mean the brain is aging. They actually increase the surface area so even more neurons can fit inside your skull. So wrinkles are a sign of higher processing power. Second, the brain itself has no pain receptors. It literally cannot feel pain. Wild, right? And third, true multitasking? Biologically impossible. Sorry to break it to you, but your brain is actually just switching rapidly between tasks, which, funny enough, ruins our focus and learning ability. Moving on to part 2, the language of neurons.
We've seen the big picture macro structure, but down at the microscopic level, neurons don't actually touch each other. No way! They communicate across an incredibly tiny gap. We're talking about 20 to 40 nanometers wide, called a synapse. This is the microscopic junction between the transmitting end, or the axon, of one neuron, and the receiving end, the dendrite, of another. Every single thing you do relies on messages crossing this microscopic canyon.
What's really fascinating here is the sheer mechanics of it. An electrical spike, which neuroscientists call an action potential, hits the end of the presynaptic cell. This jolt of electricity basically primes the cell, preparing it to send its crucial message, jumping right across that gap to the next neuron.
Let's walk through exactly how this rapid-fire sequence unfolds chronologically. First, that brief electrical action potential travels down the axon. Second, when it reaches the end, it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters right into the synaptic cleft. Third, these chemicals drift across and bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, fitting together perfectly, just like a key in a lock. And fourth, that binding causes the signal to turn right back into an electrical form to continue its journey. It literally goes from electricity to chemistry back to electricity in a fraction of a millisecond.
That brings us to part 3, where memories are made.
So how does this rapid-fire, microscopic chemical language actually translate into the human experience? Like, how do you remember your childhood or learn to ride a bike? Well, our brain brilliantly splits up its memory duties. Explicit memories, which are facts, events, conscious things you can recall, are processed largely by the hippocampus and the neocortex. But implicit memories, like motor skills, playing an instrument, or riding that bike, are filed away completely separately by deeper structures like the basal ganglia and cerebellum. This is exactly why a person can sometimes lose conscious memories, but still seamlessly remember how to perform complex physical tasks. And hey, if you have ever wondered why highly emotional or fearful memories are almost completely impossible to forget, you can thank the amygdala. This small, almond-shaped structure is basically the brain's emotional architect. It attaches super strong feelings like intense fear, joy, or shame to our memories, permanently locking them in so they stick with us. It's a hardcore evolutionary survival mechanism.
Part 4. Hijacking the reward circuit.
Unfortunately, the very same cellular mechanisms that help us learn, form good habits, and remember beneficial behaviors can be disastrously manipulated. Take dopamine, for example. It isn't just about pleasure, as many people tend to think. It's actually a potent reinforcement chemical. When an addictive drug is introduced, large surges of dopamine essentially teach the brain to seek that drug at the absolute expense of other, healthier goals and activities. It completely hijacks the brain's natural reward circuit to form powerful, unbreakable, compulsive habits. The National Institute on Drug Abuse uses a brilliant analogy here. The difference between normal natural rewards and drug rewards can be likened to the difference between someone whispering into your ear versus someone shouting directly into a microphone. The surge of chemicals from the drug is just completely, entirely overwhelming for the brain's delicate balance. So, when faced with the chemical equivalent of a shouting microphone, the brain has to physically adapt to protect itself. It turns down its own volume by reducing the number of dopamine receptors. And this creates a really tragic biological adaptation known as tolerance. The individual is left feeling lifeless, totally unable to feel pleasure from normal, natural rewards without the substance, simply because their actual neurological hardware has been forcibly altered.
And finally, Part 5. Mapping the connectome.
Now that we understand the incredible power and, frankly, the fragility of these neural connections, we arrive at the absolute most ambitious scientific frontier of our time, trying to physically map every single one of them. This is the Human Connectome Project. It's a massive $40 million effort launched by the National Institutes of Health to map the complex wiring of the live human brain. If mapping the human genome was about finding our basic building blocks, this is like creating a functional Google Maps for neuroscience. It is allowing scientists to navigate the neural superhighways of the human brain for the very first time in history. The science behind this is absolutely stunning. Researchers are currently utilizing immense computing power and highly specialized MRI scanners to chart these pathways. By tracking the microscopic motion of water molecules inside the brain, because water naturally moves more easily parallel to nerve fibers, scientists can render these beautiful, colorful maps of the physical cables snaking through our white matter.
And when you zoom in even further, the true microscale complexity really reveals itself. Because this incredibly dense wiring is influenced not just by your genetics, but by every single life experience you've ever had, everything you've ever learned. Your personal map of connections is entirely unique to you. It is quite literally as completely individual as a fingerprint.
Which leaves us with this final, truly awe-inspiring thought. You are more than your genes. You are your connectome. The sum total of your memories, your habits, your unique skills, and your very identity is beautifully encoded right there in this vast, microscopic web of 86 billion cells. So the next time you have a thought, just remember the universe of 86 billion cells firing away inside your skull. If you are entirely the product of your connectome, and your connectome is constantly changing, who will you be tomorrow?